Headphones on, the whispers begin.
Have you ever tried to play God? I wouldn't do it. You might end up summoning the devil. The sky was bruised with purples and blacks as the storm rolled in, lightning flashing like an ominous warning over the skeletal remains of an old animal shelter. What once was Haven Paws, a place of refuge for strays and abandoned pets, now loomed like a cursed cathedral. Overgrown ivy clawed up the stone walls and broken windows gaped like empty eye sockets. The air was thick with the stench of rot and wet fur, mingled with a faint metallic tang that hinted at something far worse than decay. A group of 6 had found themselves stranded outside the shelter, their cars abandoned miles back due to the floodwaters cutting off the main road. They were a motley crew. Brandon, the arrogant leader who insisted he knew the way out. Sarah, the skittish veterinary assistant who had reluctantly tagged along. Marcus and Lena, a couple in their early 20s who had joined the group seeking shelter from the storm. Dave, a burly ex-Marine with a perpetual scowl. And Ellie, the quiet one, barely saying a word since they started. The shelter door creaked open, revealing a dark, yawning entrance. No one wanted to go in, but the rain was relentless, beating down like a punishment. They didn't have a choice. Inside, the shelter was a cold, echoing mausoleum. Flickering emergency lights bathed the hallway in a sickly green glow, barely illuminating the rows of rusted cages lining the walls. The sound of dripping water echoed off the tiles, each drop resonating like a ticking clock. A low, animalistic growl rumbled from somewhere deep within the building, sending shivers down their spines. "What the hell happened here?" Brandon muttered, his voice cracking despite his bravado. Sarah's eyes scanned the walls, noticing the faded, blood-stained flyers warning against unauthorized entry. She had heard rumors about Haven Paws, stories of strange experiments, unethical practices, but never imagined she'd be standing inside. "I don't like this," Lena whispered, clutching Marcus's arm. "Let's just stay by the entrance until the rain stops." "No," Brandon snapped. "We need to find something to block the door and make sure nothing gets in. We're not the only ones seeking shelter." As they moved deeper into the facility, they stumbled upon the first sign that something was terribly wrong. The cages were empty, but blood smeared the floors and walls in vicious streaks, as if whatever had been inside had torn itself free in a frenzy. Hair and tufts of fur clung to the bars, and the faint whimper of a dog echoed down the hallway, a pitiful, mournful sound that sent chills through their bones. Dave took point, his flashlight slicing through the darkness, revealing glimpses of torn animal remains, limbs and entrails strewn about like a grotesque buffet. The animals hadn't just been killed, they had been ripped apart with a savagery that defied nature. He stopped suddenly, his beam catching the eyes of a small, hunched figure in the shadows. "What is that?" Ellie whispered, her voice barely audible. The figure moved, slinking forward into the light. It was a dog, or at least what used to be one. Its fur was matted and patchy, skin stretched over an unnatural frame, muscles rippling grotesquely beneath its hide. Its eyes glowed an eerie yellow, and its mouth hung open, revealing rows of jagged, shark-like teeth. The creature sniffed the air, lips curling back in a snarl that echoed through the hallway. Without warning, it lunged. Dave's reflexes kicked in as he swung a broken piece of metal piping, striking the beast with a sickening crunch. It yelped and fell back, but the sound of claws scraping against the floor grew louder. From every corner of the shelter, more of the mutated animals emerged. Dogs, cats, even birds twisted into monstrous forms with talons and fangs. The group scattered in panic. Marcus and Lena bolted down a side corridor, screaming as they were pursued by a pack of creatures that moved like shadows, silent and deadly. Brandon and Sarah sprinted the other way, the flashlight beam bouncing erratically as they ran. Dave tried to hold his ground, but the beasts were relentless, tearing into his flesh with savage abandon. He managed to grab a jagged piece of broken glass and slashed wildly, but they overwhelmed him, pulling him down in a flurry of blood and screams. Ellie had hidden behind a stack of old crates, her breath hitching as she watched Dave's demise in horror. She had never seen anything so brutal. His screams were short-lived, cut off by the wet, crunching sounds of teeth tearing into muscle and bone. Ellie bit down on her hand to keep from screaming, tears streaming down her face as she crawled away, careful not to make a sound. Brandon and Sarah found themselves in what looked like the main laboratory, its walls lined with cages and medical equipment. The air was thick with the acrid smell of chemicals and something far more foul. Papers and notebooks were strewn across the floor, detailing grotesque experiments, gene splicing, chemical alterations, and unnatural breeding programs that defied any ethical boundaries. The scientists had been playing God, creating hybrid monstrosities that combined the worst traits of predators. "Look at this," Sarah said, picking up a torn notebook page. They were trying to create the ultimate guard animal, something that would protect them no matter what. "Well, it looks like they succeeded," Brandon spat, kicking over a stack of cages in frustration. "But where the hell did they all go?" As if in response, a guttural howl echoed through the walls, and Sarah felt a cold sweat break out on her skin. They weren't alone. A massive shadow moved in the far corner of the room, something far larger than the other creatures. It emerged into the light, a grotesque amalgamation of wolf and bear, standing on its hind legs, its maw dripping with saliva and blood. Its eyes were intelligent, filled with a malevolent cunning that sent a fresh wave of terror coursing through them. It charged. Brandon tried to run, but the beast was too fast, its claws raking across his back with such force that he was thrown against the wall. Blood splattered, and his body fell limp, twitching in the final throes of life. Sarah screamed, backing up until her back hit the cold metal of a filing cabinet. The creature stalked towards her, every breath a growl that rattled the windows. Ellie watched from a distance, hidden in a darkened corner. She saw the beast closing in on Sarah, felt the terror that gripped her own heart, but knew there was nothing she could do. Sarah's screams were cut short as the monster descended, tearing into her with a brutality that left no doubt these creatures had no trace of domestication left. It was pure, unbridled carnage. Ellie knew she had to find a way out, but she was trapped, surrounded by predators that had no fear and an insatiable hunger for flesh. She moved quietly, slipping through the shadows, until she stumbled upon a small office tucked away in the back. The room was lined with shelves filled with chemicals, test tubes, and labeled vials, many of them shattered or spilled. Her eyes landed on a large glass cabinet filled with dozens of syringes and bottles marked with biohazard symbols. A notebook lay open on the desk, detailing the final, desperate measures the scientists had tried to contain their own creations. One entry caught her eye. Compound X, highly toxic to subjects, only administered in case of total containment failure. Handle with extreme caution. The entry was dated the day before the shelter had been abandoned. Ellie's mind raced. This was it. This was the poison. It was their last-ditch effort to kill the monsters they had unleashed. A lethal cocktail designed to kill every living thing it touched. She grabbed a syringe and a few vials, stuffing them into her pockets. She had no idea if it would work, but it was her only chance. With trembling hands, she made her way back through the maze of cages, the sounds of the beasts echoing around her. The shelter had become a slaughterhouse, every corridor stained with blood and pieces of her former companions. Ellie's heart pounded as she carefully drew the poison into the syringe, gripping it tightly. She found the main group of creatures clustered in the large central room, feasting on what remained of Marcus and Lena. Ellie gagged but forced herself to stay focused. She climbed onto a stack of cages, high enough to be out of their immediate reach, and threw a piece of debris to get their attention. They turned, snarling, their eyes locking onto her. Ellie braced herself, holding the syringe like a dagger. "Come and get it, you bastards!" she shouted. The largest of the beasts, the bear-wolf hybrid, lunged first. Ellie leaped down, plunging the syringe into its throat with all her strength, emptying the poison into its veins. The creature roared, stumbling backward as its body convulsed violently. The other monsters hesitated, watching their leader as it thrashed and foamed at the mouth, its skin bubbling and peeling away. The poison spread like wildfire. One by one, the creatures succumbed, collapsing in heaps as their bodies twisted in agony. Ellie watched, numb with shock and exhaustion, as the last of them twitched and fell silent. The shelter, once filled with their nightmarish growls, was now dead quiet. Ellie stood alone in the carnage, her hands stained with blood and her mind reeling from the horrors she had witnessed. She managed to find her way out and left the place in the middle of the storm. Her friends had died, yes, but she had managed to stop those abominations of nature. And why not say it? She prevented the death of many other people. You may be one of them.